We're on.
Sweet. So this is the informational speech. I'm Taylor Richardson. Here's my audience. Alan, I don't know your last name. Alan, Adam Holcomb, Jordan Spars holding the camera, Clayton Wilson, Lee Wanton, and Caleb Severson. This is crop to cup. Imagine this. Your alarm is screaming. You wake up, roll out of bed, and stumble into your kitchen. If you're like most, you'll grab a cup of coffee, as 83% of Americans do, says U.S. Today's article, Coffee Grinds Fuel for the Nation. Have you ever thought about where coffee comes from? Would it surprise you if coffee beans are actually a part of a fruit? They are more like cherry pits than they are pintos. The coffee process is a surprisingly complex thing, but I'm going to break it down into three main sections: growing, trading, and producing. As a marketing student and a coffee enthusiast, it's my pleasure to have done all this research to give to you guys today. So we're going to start with growing. It all begins with a tree. A seedling takes about 7 years to finally produce enough coffee to be an actual crop. Coffee makes its first appearance, as I said before, in the form of a fruit. And once it's all ripe and ready to go, it's time for harvesting. In the article Analysis of the Coffee Harvesting Process, Fabio Santos and his team found harvesting is one of the most important operations in the coffee production process. This operation has a high cost and impact on the final quality of the product. Harvesting can look like either hand picking or with a huge machine that literally shakes the cherries off of the plant. So how do we get from cherries to the actual beans? Next step in the process, which is pulping. A coffee farm named Koo Park wrote about pulping in their article Crop to Cup, explaining that the cherries are first placed into a tub of water. Then, if there are cherries that float to the surface of that tub, those are taken out and thrown out, because the floating means there's an air pocket in them created by an insect called a coffee borer. So once those are thrown aside, the ones that sink to the bottom are kept and then thrown into a machine to remove or pulp the outside of the cherry. The article continues to explain the beans come out of the tub at about 50% moisture content, but it needs to be 12% for the coffee beans to actually be ready to roast. So they are placed in a gas-fired coffee dryer, which is kind of like a clothes dryer, really. And then they're taken out and hopefully are ready to go to be roasted. Now the initial process of growing is complete. It's time to move to prep for trading and trading. After another husking process, then the beans are placed into another machine for sorting that groups beans based on size and density, which allows for an even, consistent roast, which we will actually cover in a little bit. Once they're sorted, they're then traded. This is actually an exceptionally complex process as it goes internationally. It depends on the nation that you're in and who you're trading with and what it looks like for your farm. So most of the time, farmers don't have the resources to actually trade their beans on their own. So they work in co-ops or they group up with other farms to sell their beans. Or a roaster reaches out to a farm specifically and trades directly. Either way, coffee gets to the United States through exporting, which Gruhl and Levy's textbook Marketing defines as producing goods in one country and selling them in another country. For U.S.-based roasters, once they receive their unroasted green beans, it's time to get busy and start roasting. So roasting basically means taking the green beans and applying heat and then making it turn to a different color. Depending on the color means the roast. So this would be a dark roast. Lighter roast literally is just roasting the beans for a less amount of time and it comes out with a lighter color. A different roast means a different flavor. Once you've chosen the roast, it's time to grind the beans. Grinding is one of the most well-known parts of the coffee process, but is also one of the parts that is least done well. The grind size, consistency of the grind, and the time it takes between the grinding and actual brewing of the coffee has has a major impact on the overall taste of the coffee. And for every manner of making the coffee, there's actually a different form of grinding, which leads us to our final part of the process, brewing. We know that there are lattes, diner coffee, frappuccinos, cold brew, and Keurig. All are coffee, and a lot of times the coffee is actually very, very similar between the different forms that we actually drink, but we all know that they all taste pretty different. That's because they're all made in very different ways. Lattes take about 3 minutes to make, but they use about a machine that's around $10,000 to actually make it through. Cold brew takes about 24 hours to brew, but can be made with only a $3 investment. And Keurig is about a $100 or $200 machine, takes 2 minutes, but still tastes very different from a latte. All are frequented methods of completing the coffee's path from crop to cup, and all taste very, very different. All of these are pieces that make up the coffee production process. If we were to lay them all out into an equation and multiply them, we would see that there is a huge complexity and massive variety of ways that coffee can turn out. Growing, trading, and producing are the 3 major steps of the coffee process. We all may drink coffee either to warm us up or wake our minds up in the morning. Yet it's easy to let the commonality of the drink let us forget about how complex of a process it takes for us to actually get our coffee in the morning. How will all this new information affect the way you look at the generic cup of coffee you drink at Perkins or the Starbucks latte that you sip on during your homework? Let's shape the way you look at the beverage and so many other common commodities we so easily take for granted. Thank you.
Yeah.